It's pitch black. No moon. No streetlights, obviously, because streetlights haven't been invented yet. A guy on a horse is riding fast through a field, screaming. He doesn't know what he's screaming about. He just knows screaming feels right. Somewhere behind him, 100 guys with muskets hear the screaming and decide, yep, that's it. We're at war now. Nobody asked who they're at war with. Doesn't matter. Muskets are loaded. Adrenaline is high. Somebody's about to die. Gunfire erupts across the field. Flashes in the dark. Men shouting orders nobody can hear over more men shouting different orders. A cannon goes off. Nobody fired it on purpose. It just sort of happened. By morning, thousands of men are dead or scattered across the countryside, and not one single enemy soldier was anywhere near that field, because the enemy wasn't there yet. They were 2 days away. These guys just fought an entire war against themselves. Okay, let's rewind. Because you need context for how a fully grown army manages to lose a war to a war that didn't exist. It's 1788. The Austrian Empire is dragging itself into a fight against the Ottoman Empire, mostly because Russia asked nicely, and Austria didn't want to look weak in front of Russia. Classic 18th century peer pressure. The Austrian army assembling for this is massive. Like, we ran out of uniforms. Massive. Somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 men, depending which exhausted historian you ask. Problem number 1. This army doesn't speak one language. It's got Austrians, Germans, Hungarians, Serbians, Croatians, Czechs, Romanians. Basically every flavour of person who lives near Austria got drafted. Problem number 2. They're tired. They've been marching for weeks through Ottoman territory, bracing for an attack that keeps not happening. Problem number 3, and this is the important one. They're scared. Not nervous scared. Genuinely, deeply, paranoid in the dark scared. Because somewhere out there, the actual Ottoman army is real, and it is coming, and nobody knows exactly when. So, picture that. Tens of thousands of exhausted men who don't all speak the same language, sitting in the dark, waiting for an invisible enemy. This is a powder keg. We just haven't found the match yet. Spoiler, the match is alcohol. A small scouting party, let's call them the advance guard, because that's what they were, gets sent ahead to check the river crossing near a town called Karansebes. Standard recon. Make sure the way is clear, report back. No big deal. On the way, they run into some local merchants. The merchants are selling schnapps. The scouting party, being soldiers and being human, decides this is an excellent time to buy a lot of schnapps. Keep an eye on these guys. They don't know it yet, but they're about to start something they cannot stop. Word travels back to the main camp that the advance guard found booze, so now a second group of soldiers, infantry this time, comes marching up the road to get in on it. The first group, already several schnapps deep, does not want to share. A shouting match starts, in the dark, between two groups of armed, exhausted, drunk men who don't fully trust each other to begin with. Someone in the crowd, nobody agrees who, shouts a word. Stoj. In Serbian, that means halt. Reasonable thing to shout at an approaching group you don't recognize in the dark, except half the army doesn't speak Serbian. What a chunk of German-speaking soldiers heard instead was something a lot closer to Turks. So somewhere in that crowd, in pitch darkness, surrounded by people speaking 5 different languages, a single misheard word just turned a drunken argument over schnapps into, "The Ottomans are here," and that's the spark. Everything after this is just the fire finding fuel. Someone fires a shot. Nobody's sure who or why or at what. There's nothing to shoot at. But in the dark, a gunshot means the enemy is real. And now everyone believes it. More shots. More screaming. The infantry, convinced they're under surprise attack, starts firing into the crowd ahead of them, which again is also Austrian soldiers. Word spreads back down the line faster than anyone can correct it. We're under attack, fall back, fall back. A cavalry officer somewhere starts yelling at people to retreat. Cavalry officers are loud. People listen to loud men with horses. So now you've got infantry firing forward, cavalry pulling backward, artillery crews who can hear gunfire and screaming, but can't see a single enemy soldier deciding the safest move is to just start firing cannons into the dark anyway. This is no longer a misunderstanding. This is a battle against nobody. A group of hussars? That's Austrian light cavalry, very dramatic uniforms, very easy to spot from a distance, gallops past one of the infantry units in full retreat. The infantry sees fast-moving cavalry coming at them out of the dark and assumes Ottoman cavalry. Charge. They open fire on their own hussars. And here's the part that turns this from chaotic into legendary. Someone, again, identity lost to history, possibly out of mercy, shouts that the enemy has artillery. There is no enemy artillery. There is no enemy. There has never, at any point tonight, been an enemy within 50 miles of this field. But the words enemy artillery hit a tired, drunk, terrified army like a starting gun. Full panic. Thousands of men in every direction, just running, abandoning wagons, abandoning weapons, some abandoning their boots apparently, because boots were found scattered across the field the next morning. One officer reportedly tries to calm everyone down by yelling that there's no attack. It's a mistake. Stop shooting. Nobody hears him, or if they do, they assume he's lying, or Ottoman, or possibly Ottoman and lying. By sunrise, the camp at Karansebes is empty. Wagons overturned. Tents collapsed. Cannons abandoned mid-field, primed and loaded for an enemy that was never coming. Somewhere between 150 and 1,500 men are dead or wounded, depending which account you trust, and historians genuinely cannot agree, which tells you everything about how reliable anyone's memory of that night was. Killed by friendly fire, killed by panic trampling, killed by an army that fought and lost entirely to itself, and he's dead, and so is he. So what happens to the guys actually involved? The scouting party who started the whole thing with the Schnapps mostly survived, got reassigned. History does not record a single one of them ever bringing up that night again, which honestly, fair. The cavalry officer who started the retreat call faded into total obscurity. No court-martial on record. The army was apparently too embarrassed to even properly investigate. The infantry commanders who ordered fire on their own troops quietly absorbed back into the ranks. Nobody wanted their name attached to this. And the actual commanding general of the entire army, Field Marshal Lacy, yes, the guy in charge of all of this, woke up the next morning, got a report of total chaos, and had to figure out how to explain to the emperor that his army had been single-handedly defeated by a rumour. Now here's the twist you've been waiting for. 2 days later, the actual Ottoman army shows up. They arrive expecting a fight. Instead, they find an abandoned camp, wagons overturned, cannons sitting loaded, untouched, pointed at nothing, bodies, no living soldiers in sight. They walk into Karansebes and capture it without firing a single shot, because the Austrian army had already defeated itself 2 nights earlier and left. And that's when the real army showed up, to a battlefield that had already finished the war for them. So, is this completely true? Here's the part most retellings skip. Historians actually argue about how exaggerated this story is. The core event, Austrian troops engaging in friendly fire, chaos near Karansebes before an Ottoman advance, is documented. But the death toll, the Schnapps detail, even the exact Stoi-Tursi mix-up, comes mostly from second-hand and embellished 19th century retellings, not eyewitness battlefield reports. Some historians think it's a real event that got exaggerated for centuries because it's just too good a story not to retell. Others think there's a kernel of truth buried under 200 years of dramatic upgrades. Either way, the actual documented fact stands. An Austrian army, scared and confused in the dark, fired on itself, panicked, and abandoned a battlefield before the enemy even arrived. Yeah, I know. Keep reading the comments below because somebody's going to argue this didn't happen, and somebody else is going to argue it happened way worse than this. That's the fun part. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy your army can face is your own army at 2 a.m., slightly drunk, and very, very bad at speaking the same language. If you don't believe any of this happened, good. Go look it up. I'll wait. And while you're down there in the comments arguing about it, hit subscribe. Next week, it's an army that lost a war to a flock of birds. That one's real too.